afternoon, all. The next session that we are going live with is Revolutionizing Project Construction and Site Management using smart drone data and technology. Moderating the session, we have Kerwin Francis, Head Projects and Valuations, Property Finance, Nedbank CIB. Joining him in conversation is Jessica Davies, Senior Disruption Analyst, Nedbank, Tom Feeley's Director of Enterprise Sales, OpenSpace, and lastly, Warren Vitter, CEO, Integrated Aerial Systems. This is going to prove to be a very interesting session with lots of interesting technology and data. And I'd just like to pass on the torch to Kerwin Francis. Thank you, Kerwin, and over to you.
Hi, thanks very much. Hi to everyone else. It's been a long day, but I've got an interesting panel here, so I'm sure we'll keep you all entertained. As mentioned, my name is Kerwin Francis. I'm the Head of Projects and Valuations for the Nedbank Property Finance Africa team. So I look after all the project managements outside of South Africa and well as the valuations. Our topic for discussion today is revolutionizing project construction and site management using smart drone and data. We'll have a great panel for you, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and then we can kick off. Jessica, you can go first.
Hi, I'm Jessica Davies from Nedbank. I sit in our disruption and innovation team and essentially responsible for helping scout for new and disruptive technologies that can bring value to the bank and or its clients.
Tom?
Hi, yeah, I'm Tom Felice with OpenSpace. I'll tell you a little bit about what we're doing later today. We're like a Google Street View for projects using 360 technology. My background's in construction originally, but in the last 8 years, I've actually been on the construction technology side. So I've worked at various startups. One of them was acquired by Autodesk. And then I actually worked at a drone company like Warren. And then now I am at 360 Technology Company, so excited to tell you about my background and experience and how construction tech is revolutionizing and kind of changing the way we're building.
Warren, go ahead.
How's it? So yeah, I'm the Director and CEO of Integrated Aerial Systems, or IS. Essentially, we're a multi-industry drone service provider. And what that means is that we provide drone services to certain key industries, such as construction, agriculture, mining. And we also do certain asset inspections for solar PV and wind turbines, among others. So essentially, we're a fully licensed drone business, which means that we've been approved by the South African Civil Aviation Authority to conduct operations all over South Africa. So, while we provide the hardware and expertise to collect the data, we also do the processing of the data and final reporting to the client. So, in essence, we positioned ourselves to be an end-to-end service from executing the flight operations to providing advanced analytics and reporting.
Let's get into it. So, Tom, what impact do you see advancements in AI and machine learning and data capturing that can improve a construction job site?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, obviously, these buzz terms like artificial intelligence and machine learning, they're kind of hot topics in general, but in construction technology, they're actually providing a lot of real practical benefits to construction projects. My technology, for example, it is our company, what we do is we take 360 cameras and we place them on hard hats, and then the construction workers, they just walk around the job site. Now they're collecting a ton of construction data, and just in the two and a half years that we've really been doing this, we've captured billions of square feet, square meters, and collected hundreds of millions of images. And so what we're doing with that is we're actually able to classify those images and start to gather data from them. So understanding what different construction elements are, and it's really making an impact, not just at our company, but there's other firms out there where, it's really taking those automated, mundane, repeatable tasks of that were and automating those and really using AI to actually bubble up these insights into your projects that you never had before. And definitely can get into kind of how we do that a little bit more, but But yeah, on the safety side, there's tons of benefits. There's other companies out there that are able to identify whether you're wearing hard hats or safety glasses just by using AI. And then obviously the rise of augmented reality and mixed reality. You're really able to visit job sites without having to be on site through a lot of this technology.
All right, and then Jessica, being employed at a bank, what the bank's view on enhancements in tech in the construction space, and what examples have you seen how they work?
Sure, thanks, Cohen. I mean, it's interesting. Tom used the phrase "hot topics," but in reality, AI, machine learning, those have all been concepts that have been around since the modern computing era began in the 1960s. You know, these people who came up with computers had these massive visions of computers being able to do human tasks. And the reality is it's taken us about 60 years to get to the point where the cost of these technologies is accessible, the computing power is available, and now we're seeing real world applications in industries like construction, which have traditionally been very manual and very complex due to what goes on in sites and the project management process and the complexities of operating in these very real world environments. So for us, you know, these advancements are very much in line with our thesis on emerging and disruptive technologies, which is that as these advancements in hardware and computer power make these technologies more accessible, they can start to be applied in industries that have never been considered for these kind of technologies before. So what we see happening in a financial space, you know, might be light years about what happens in a construction space, but we're starting to see these technologies and these analytics. You know, Tom mentioned gathering data, Warren mentioned providing analytics, and ultimately, you know, we see this as enabling automated decision making, similar to how we're applying AI and the like in the financial world. So for us, this technology is interesting to a bank, and you might say, like, why does a bank want to invest in drone technology or with 60-degree cameras on their site surveyor hard hats? But the reality is it's going to change the way the bank views and measures risk. Instead of physically monitoring all of our assets and projects, you know, we can start to remotely monitor them. And like I said, we now have access to a much larger array of analytics based on real world events and real time happenings, as opposed to previously static financial information. And in the bigger picture, we believe this can be used to help reduce the likelihood of delays, of missed payments, and ultimately defaults, or at the very least, give us, you know, better information than we previously had before, which is ultimately what a bank is trying to do: manage risk and provide value to our clients. And examples of this are the work that we have been doing with both IAS and Open Space. And we can talk about that experimentation methodology a little bit later on.
And by also the bank managing their risk, they're also, when you're using data, you're also assisting the client, because the data that we use also benefits them. So in terms of a 360 camera, the bank will use it to visit the site, but the client could also use it for delays, for example, or claims mitigations, etc.
100%. And building these platforms that can distribute information across the various stakeholders involved in a construction project is extremely valuable. So, and that is not just in the construction space, but really in the entire project management and transacting and you know, compliance and governance of the project as a whole.
All right, Warren, in terms of unmanned aerial systems or drones, how are they adding value to construction projects? And then we can also mention the work that you were involved in with Jessica in terms of Nedbank as well.
Okay, so I think, you know, one of the very sort of common and obvious ways in which drones are currently being used by most people on construction sites is through capturing, you know, images or video, you know, which really allow for a bird's eye view or aerial perspective of the site. You know, and this can be very helpful for teams to understand what is being completed, keeping track of equipment, inspecting hazardous areas, and then also using, you know, these videos and photos, you know, for the likes of marketing purposes. So this is a very quick, easy, and cheap method, and it can be helpful for stakeholders. But really kind of managing this kind of data can be quite tricky. It can't really be accurately quantified. Annotating and ensuring everyone has up-to-date information is quite problematic. So I think the real value add is to use drones to collect that aerial data that can be processed into what is known as an auto-rectified map, which essentially means that the maps are scalable. That is that we can make measurements on these maps, and we can begin to scientifically quantify work and progress on these construction sites. So there are a variety of outputs that are generated from the imagery, such as auto-rectified maps, as I mentioned, and the advantage of this is that we can make linear area and volume measurements. We can produce digital elevation models, or DSMs, so we can generate a map showing the varying site elevations. It can produce contours from this, which can be quite helpful. There's 3D point clouds or textured meshes. So basically, we can view an accurate reconstruction of the site in 3D in a model that is also scalable. So all this data is essentially stored in and managed in an intuitive web-based platform, which houses the digital twin of the work site. And this is accessible to all project stakeholders. So this allows for greater monitoring and awareness for what is happening on site. And it also further allows for stakeholders to have access to a single source truth data, which can be really important. So I just think some ways in which this data can be used in the real world scenario, for example, is measuring of a volume of a stockpile, and this was done during the Nedbank project, to check how much stock you might have on site. So many examples also, was there a correct amount of stone delivered, or what earth do we need to move on site? So generating these volume measurements is really quick and easy. Another brief example is taking your project design file, so your design file, and overlaying that on drone generated data, or the as-built, to check for any defects or possible issues that could have gone unnoticed. And down the line could mean significant cost to rectify. So, for example, if you detect a plumbing issue early on, when you're putting in the pipes in the ground, it's relatively simple to go back and move it and get it fixed. But if you don't catch this, until after you've poured the concrete or started to build the rest of the structure, then it's a lot more expensive, and you will have a lot more sort of rework to do. So I think that to say if you don't find the problem until you or if you don't find this problem until you deliver to a customer, then it starts to cause the leaks and damages, and the costs go up even further. So I think the key here is that we want to spot these problems sooner when they're more cost effective to fix, and I think that drone imagery can really help identify these issues early on before they become costly mistakes. So increasing the frequency of these surveys allows all involved to have up-to-date critical site information, and it can become a method of digitally managing your site, with options for comparing the surveys over time. And this is exactly what we did with Nedbank. They could compare one survey to the next survey in a side-by-side comparison. You could annotate the images and maps for better communication. Any of the stakeholders involved could generate or conduct their own measurements. They could check the design file versus the as-built, so you could overlay your design file on the drone imagery, and this could be helped to verify subcontractor work completed on time and according to design. I think that there might have been a dispute with the contractor regarding a stockpile, and they could use this imagery to go back and to check that. So a sort of a further value add is that all these outputs can actually be brought into other design platforms such as AutoCAD or construction monitoring software such as Procore through different API integrations. So yeah, I think that's in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then in terms of how accurate a drone technology is in terms of measuring stockpiles and measuring the facade of a building to make sure it's the right size or in the right place, how accurate is this data?
Yes. Okay. So so essentially, there's two ways in which you can go on site and you can manually take images. But the way in which the drone goes and collects the data is essentially it's really quite simple and easy, and there's no special no super skilled drone pilots needed to ensure that the right data is captured. So essentially, what happens is the drone pilot will draw a boundary around the construction site. And in the flight planning software, they select important parameters such as, the flight height, the overlap, among some other variable inputs that might be needed. And then, essentially the drone pilot, presses fly, and the drone automatically takes off, and it conducts its entire flight, flying along a predetermined grids and taking images at intervals. So if a high resolution 3D model is required, then there's also automatic settings, which the drone just flies and takes images itself. So, the drone pilot doesn't have to do anything. He just literally has to draw the perimeter of the shapefile around the construction site. And, this can be done for most construction sites in one flight, which is 25 minutes. So, the data generated is a series of overlapping images of the site, which can then be stitched together in a process known as photogrammetry. So essentially uses key points identified in the overlapping images to reconstruct the site. And so for a lot of customers, the big question really comes to, well, how accurate are these results? And I think, in the profession of surveyors, accurately quantifying or measuring a map is crucial, and can a drone generated outputs provide the degree of accuracy I'm looking for? So, and I think that the simple answer to this is yes. There are a number of factors which can impact on the accuracy of a map, which I'm not going to delve into at all. But essentially, at a height of around 60 meters, you're looking at an accuracy of around 5 centimeters relative accuracy. So that is accuracy within the map. And in order to improve and ensure the degree of accuracy of the results, we basically highly recommend to implement what is known as ground control points in a survey. And this is what we did with Nedbank. So basically what this entails is laying down a series of markers on the ground, which are visible to the drone, and then taking measurements with a differential GPS. And this really drastically improves the reliability of the results. And it ensures, a really high degree of accuracy that may be required for most construction projects. So, this is the way that we work all our mining and construction projects. And, the clients can be confident in the results and the accuracy produced. So generally within 1 to 2 centimeters level of accuracy. We also produce, a full quality report for each of these surveys. So the client can actually see, how accurately the data was processed and the outputs. So, and then you could go a step further. I'm not going to get into it now. And if you wanted to get, really, really accurate, you're looking for millimeter accuracy, you could then, leverage what is known as LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging, which essentially uses pulses of light, to map the surfaces. And that could be an option that your construction project could look at, really depending on what you're trying to achieve. So I think, the bottom line here is that, provided that, everything, all the parameters are correct, the accuracy that you can achieve is essentially survey grade from drones.
Then the normal question that comes up with the drone technology is it has an application for externals and until the building's closed off. Is that an accurate statement?
Sorry, just to say that again, it has
It's usable until the building is closed off. So you can use it for external works and
Yeah. So I mean, obviously.
Oh, sorry, Warren. Go ahead.
I mean, the drone is great from conception, pre-construction, earthworks moving, and then during so the life cycle of the project. And I think that it's great because you can see what's happening on the outside of the building. And I think this is where open space really comes in and fills a massive gap of which drone imagery can't get, and that's obviously the inside of the buildings. So you're really getting like an accurate reconstruction of the outside and what's happening external to the building. But I mean, I think Tom can obviously talk to sort of really filling in the gaps with providing that sort of level of insights within the construction site.
Yeah, no, that's what I was about to say. You took the words out of my mouth, Warren. I mean, basically, we're very complementary solutions, and having worked for a very similar solution in the States, it's called SiteScan. It was 3DR is the company, and it was acquired by Esri. I'm sure you're familiar with it, Warren. But we did all the same stuff, and when I came over to OpenSpace, actually, the person who was the president over at SiteScan started this company OpenSpace with 3 of his friends from the MIT Media Lab. They're all PhDs in computer vision and machine learning in the States. And they all started, and they've all done companies before, but really where the drone, and there's a ton of value in that data that Warren, obviously laid out. But when you want to go inside the building and you want to get that kind of first-person view, this is really where OpenSpace complements and really adds to that, as Warren put it, that single source of truth for all of the stakeholders to really collaborate on this visual data. And, especially with, travel being so difficult and timely, even before COVID, having that ability to visit a job site at any given time and see exactly what happened, and having that historical record, as Jessica mentioned, for risk mitigation purposes, but also for collaboration purposes, is a really a benefit to a lot of jobs, and a lot of companies are starting to move that way. Construction, as you guys have probably heard, is like one of the lagging industries in adopting technology. You see all these stats. Other industries are becoming more and more, and manufacturing has done it for years in their assembly line. But I think what we're seeing is now the explosion of mobile and cloud-based technologies has really accelerated the adoption of technology on the construction site. So because of that, because field workers are people that are on the move, they're building, so they don't have time to be sitting in front of computers. So they have to be data and making decisions real time. And because of the advent of these things, smartphones, I think it's really enabled teams to do that.
Tom, if you can just go into a bit more detail about OpenSpace and the breadcrumb trail that it leaves on when you open up the app, go into that so the guys can understand it a bit, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, it might be actually good for me to kind of share my screen. Can you guys see it?
Yep, we can.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, it's a visual tool, so it makes sense for me to kind of visually show it so you guys can get a sense of what it is. But like I said, if you've used Google Street View before, you basically know how to use our tool. What we do uniquely different, though, is we're using AI and computer vision to automatically stitch this to the floor plan. So inside where you don't have GPS, we're using a lot of the same photogrammetry techniques and a lot of SLAM technology, simultaneous location and mapping, to basically allow the team to navigate via that path right there, but also via these blue circles. And so it enables you to kind of see the entire project again in full 360. So you're not having to look around. The person is just walking the job site like they normally would, and it's collecting the imagery. And then what it's doing is you can actually also compare this to what it was in the past. So you have a complete historical record of how the project was put together. And you can also even compare this to the model as well. So you can actually compare this to what the Navisworks, or we work with Autodesk on the back end as well, so we can leverage the Forge model and bring it into our system, so you can kind of compare what was designed versus what was built. And it's a great tool. I mean, the key to any technology has got to be simple and easy to use. And that's what we've really done here at OpenSpace. We've enabled this ability to kind of, again, see behind the walls, see, and here's another project right here where, we were able to save, a $50,000 change order by just, not having to tear out and do rework, in the same way that drones are allowed, to do quick volumetric calculations, and value, we can, kind of get that historical record of the entire job site. And then you have it in perpetuity in case you need to go back later and see exactly how something was put together. So that's more or less, I just wanted to give a quick visual of the tool there, so you kind of get an understanding of how it's not really difficult to get going. It's just, you got to make the leap, and it doesn't require a lot of infrastructure as well. I mean, like you said, these drones fly themselves, Warren, pretty much. You press the button, do it, you just strap this on and walk indicate your starting location and walk a job. And then upload the data afterwards to the cloud, and then we do all the work on the back end.
Yeah. I mean, to what Tom was saying, just in terms of that workflow that you were showing, essentially, it's the platforms, are very similar, just providing it from an aerial perspective. I think sort of the barriers to entry, and maybe I'll wait for Kevin for the next question. But the barriers to entry in terms of the cost for drone technology or hardware has dramatically come down. The processing power has increased exponentially. There's a multitude of different platforms that one has access or the ability to process through. So it's really now it's incredibly accessible to this technology. But there are some other barriers, I think, from a legal perspective when you're dealing with drones, which might be a little bit more complicated than walking around a construction site and collecting the imagery with a camera. So
So Javid spends a question around the restrictions on drones. If you can just talk about that and how it's going to affect the drone industry, and whether it's better to have someone having their own drone on site or coming to a company like yourselves.
Cool. And I see Jared Lewin did post a question, sort of asking, also sort of speaking to this question. There's two ways companies can go about integrating drones into their workflow. The first option is to generate your own drone program from scratch, and then the second option is to kind of use a third party or a professional drone service provider. So I think if your company is of considerable size, then it might be a worthwhile option to kind of pursue your own program. But this must be sort of a careful consideration, due to the quite often onerous and stringent requirements by the CAA or the civil aviation authorities. And in America, it's the FAA, the Federal Aviation Authority. So, and these requirements really sort of vary quite considerably depending on what country you're operating in. So, I think as a business, if you are thinking about incorporating drone technology into your operations, you need to kind of think about things like training and certifying personnel within your organization to become drone pilots, building out a drone operations and field operations manual. They're the things like purchasing the right drones and the hardware, implementing things like safety, quality, security systems for your organization for the drones, then registering those drones with your local CAA, and then selecting the right sort of processing engine for the drone imagery and outputs. So I would say that really to do it professionally, you would need that kind of a dedicated wing of your organization to kind of focus on ensuring that you remain compliant with the CAA requirements, while also ensuring that you're meeting all the technical requirements for the job. So the costs of this program must obviously be weighted against the frequency and the scale at which drones will be used on the construction site. And I think in the South African context, the drone legislation is a considerable barrier to entry, which might be quite frustrating for people. And I think, a lot of people are probably just going and flying and not really sort of even taking too much note of the regulations. So there are really high standards that need to be met by the South African CAA. The costs are very high, and it's a 2-year waiting period in order to be granted, your sort of commercial drone license, which is known as your remote operator certificate, an ROC. And that ROC allows you to commercially leverage, drones, so where you can have commercial gain from them. And so I think what's happening, and I think what we actually even seeing in the United States, and I've been following it quite closely there, is that a lot of companies, even large companies, are actually tending to sort of outsource a lot of the drone flying on their construction sites. So I think, contracting a reliable and trusted drone partner that meets, all the sort of legal requirements, has a good safety record, and is competent in producing accurate outputs, has huge value and place. So, and I think for many companies, this might just be the easiest and most cost-effective option, not to punt myself too much here, but, which really kind of cuts out the compliance headaches and sort of the routine CAA inspections and audits and that, So, and I think things, that you should expect from a local sort of drone service provider is, that they should obviously cover all the flight planning and airspace authorizations. They should be able to send a certified drone pilot to conduct the survey, have the necessary drone hardware. So, in some instances, it might not be just enough to have a normal visual camera. You might want something like a thermal camera, which can come at a considerable expense. So your local drone service provider should have the different types of payloads that you might need. they should have things like third-party and public liability insurance. If something has to happen on site and you're using an unlicensed provider or you're doing it yourself, there's considerable liability that comes with that. If that drone crashes or causes damage to property, you're going to be liable and you're going to be sued. And you can't, in South Africa at least, you can't legally get drone insurance unless you are a legal operator, or third-party liability insurance at least if you're not a legal operator. Companies need to be able to obviously, provide you with, accurate data. They need to be able to, do the implementation of ground control points, ensuring that degree of accuracy. Those are just some of the things and outputs that you should look from your service provider. I think a lot of guys in South Africa on construction sites, I think that it's going to save them a lot of headaches. And cut out a lot of time and frustration by looking at there's a list of, I think, about 65 RSC holders currently in South Africa, and looking to them to potentially provide the service. And as I said, there's the likes of Oricon, which is a big engineering company. They've gone and got their own what's called a corporate RSC to be able to operate. But they're a big company, and they probably could support sort of all the additional costs involved with getting an operation legal. So, yeah, for me.
Okay. So, Jessica.
I applaud you, Warren, for fighting the good fight. When I remember all those regulatory issues when I was working in the States. So, it's becoming easier and easier, though. I'll tell you that, in the States at least. So
yeah, I mean, I wish I could say the same. I think we have a drone body set up, and we're really trying to sort of make things that that are more sort of friendly to guys that wanting to sort of get into the space. But it's things move slowly here. In the regulatory space, at least, it's really, I think that's one of the big sort of downfalls, is that this technology is completely outpaced the pace at which the legislation has moved, which has been a huge frustration for a lot of guys operating in South Africa. So high barriers to entry, which is definitely, I think, has held back the industry and it's probably the adoption of this technology into the space.
All right, thanks, guys. All right, and then in terms of the effects of COVID on technology, has it been a catalyst to it, so it's been more of an adoption? I can open up to Jessica. Take this one.
Yeah, sure. I'll start this one, and then the guys can jump in with their own experiences. Cool. But I think what COVID-19 did is, around the world, governments very quickly instituted various forms of lockdown situations which hadn't ever been seen before, where business literally stopped, it halted. And a number of companies weren't prepared for this. So they might have had digital strategies in place pre-COVID, but what the COVID pandemic highlighted was the rapid need to get some of these strategies in place. So I think what it did is, it certainly accelerated digital strategies, digital transformation, and remote ways of doing business around the world, and assumptions that we had made previously, like certain meetings need to be conducted face to face, and travel was an essential requirement of doing business, have kind of been turned upside down. And I mean, in the construction and real estate sectors especially, in South Africa, nothing could be done for 5 weeks. So how, as a company, do you react and deal with that? Here at Nedbank, there's no doubt that COVID-19 massively increased our digital adoption from our users using our app, using our other digital channels. And we've seen this in other industries, like the retail industry, where all of a sudden your retailers who had these kind of e-commerce sites, which weren't very up to date, which weren't built for scale, all of a sudden found entire populations using them. And so, with the need to do business online, transact online, communicate online, with all these restrictions and safety precautions in place, it has changed the way that companies do business.
Yeah. For open space, I mean, however much a tragedy this has been actually a blessing. And I mean, we're built for COVID. I mean, we're a tool that was an idea that was good before all this happened. But I'll tell you, since this has hit, our adoption of our tool has increased exponentially. And people, just out of necessity, I think for the industry, people are saying, hey, I cannot get to job sites. How else will I do it? Like in the States, the inspectors are actually doing inspections with our tool now. Because they can't physically get on the job site. So architects, owners are not able to fly to these job sites to do their punch lists. So what we've seen is, you know, a massive acceleration, not just in our technology, which it's kind of like what Zoom and Microsoft Teams have done. You know, they're just seen, and we're like kind of like the Zoom for construction, bringing people to these job sites and allowing them. I mean, teams are, you know, doing these types of meetings and bringing up open space on the screen share and then walking through with their architects and other stakeholders. And so because of that, you know, our business has seen an incredible uptick. It was already a good idea, but now has seen like I said, not just a 500% increase in the last few months and growing, but, you know, the ability for teams to just continue to work this way. I don't think they're going to go back, to tell you the truth, to the old way. Now they've gotten kind of spoiled. They don't need to fly out. I mean, one of our tech clients was going to fly 12 people out to Athens, Greece from the States to go visit this site. And now they're using open space, saving 12 people's flights, which right there is, and plus their travel, entertainment, and doing the same thing in a matter of a few minutes over a Zoom meeting. It's completely transformed the way people are thinking and working and interacting.
And that offsets the cost of implementing your system by saving.
By like 20x.
Yeah.
Like that, just the flights alone. Like the cost of the software. I mean, it's unlike drones, it's very easy to get our software going. You don't need internet connection. You don't need licenses. You don't need. You just need a $500 360 camera, and then you just walk around with it in our app, and then you upload the data. You do need an internet connection to upload the data afterwards, but it's really as simple as that. So because we don't need a lot of infrastructure or licensing or anything, teams can get going and get started. Like this team, again, on Thursday, decided they would use this in Athens. They're using the tool now. And they've already captured and sent the data back to the U.S. in what would have taken before weeks to coordinate and in person. So it's I think people are realizing like, wow, it was always there, but now they're like forced to do it because of COVID, and now they're seeing the huge benefits from it. And like I said, teams that are using our software are like, I'm not going back to the way I built before.
All right. And then in terms of what are the best practices for ensuring that a building site adopts tech, and opening this up to everyone that can give their views?
Tom,
yeah, I mean,
thoughts?
Yeah, I can go first, and then obviously, you know, Jessica and Warren, please add on. But you know, I've been on both sides of the equation. So I was a builder in the field, working on site before really mobile technology and iPads were prevalent. But now, you know, that I've been on the construction technology side, you know, I've noticed that you don't just need top-down buy-in. You really need a champion on the job site, like an implementation leader that's really going to say like, hey, this is a good idea. We're going to use this, whether it's drones, whether it's, you know, other cloud-based tools, whether it's open space. You really need that kind of bottom up like excitement, and the technology has really got to provide value to the team. It's got to make their lives easier. And once you see that you know, it makes the lives easier, and the teams are like, okay, I'm using this, and this is the problem I'm solving, and this is the time I'm saving, then that coupled with this kind of top-down kind of support from leadership, that's really a recipe for success in the adoption of you know, technology. So it's my couple 2 cents on that.
Yes, I would have to agree there. I mean, I've been in this disruption team for over 2 years now, so I've been involved in a number of implementation projects from, I guess, the client side of things. And in terms of corporates and incumbents looking at these technologies, one of the main requirements, and yes, it is kind of buzzwordy, but you do have to have a culture of trying new things and being willing to try them, even if they disrupt the status quo of how things are normally done. And really, once you get that mindset and that willingness to try new ideas, then all of a sudden these proposals have a platform to stand on, and you can really speak to them and argue for why they should be implemented. And that internal champion that Tom mentioned is a big part of pushing through projects like this and demonstrating the value they have to the customers. So the trick is for the startup, I guess, or the technology company, is identifying who that champion is. So really understanding who in the organization you're selling this product to. Because if you don't understand that and you're having a conversation with the wrong people, it's this very frustrating circular discussion, which I'm sure people have lots of experience with.
All right. Marvin, you have anything to add? So we can't hear you.
You're muted.
Sorry, I know. I was just saying that I think Tom hit it on the head, as did Jessica. Yeah, totally agreeing with both of them on those notes.
All right, and then anyone in the watching the session can post any questions that they have. But in terms of wrapping up, what do you see as the next step in terms of tech for a construction of a building site? Where do you see it moving to?
I mean, I could answer, from the drone side of things, in terms of the tech and advancements. I mean, every year they're coming out with something that's that's better than the previous year. That's better cameras. The processing platforms are adding more features. There's more API integrations, which is really cool. So there's the likes of Drone Deploy or Pix4D, and they have a whole internal app market. Adding on value, things like doing roofing reports. So there's all those kinds of value adds, and I think the next big thing is where guys are looking to is the cost of as I mentioned, is a sensor called LiDAR, which is light detection and ranging. We're really providing that sort of like millimeter level kind of accuracy. The cost of LiDAR is coming down every year. So I think what we're going to see sort of into the future is the sort of more regular adoption of using that kind of tech and becoming a sort of an industry standard. So it's that's where I see things kind of going from the drone space.
Yeah, from a technology as it relates to the capturing indoors with open space, really where we're headed as a company is around what we're doing, the analytics of all this. So we've made the capture process in the first part of our 2.5 years of being around really easy. So now we've captured, and I've alluded to this before, we captured a lot of tons of data. So now we're starting to use our machine learning algorithms to start to classify that data. And I think this is where in a lot of companies around, and especially in the construction technology space, are also keen onto this. But I think we're doing it in a smart way. And I'll just kind of show you guys behind the scenes a little bit of how our technology works. So we're actually building sparse point clouds and using a lot of photogrammetry techniques that the drones are using with overlapping images. But you can see along the bottom here, we're actually starting to classify what framing and drywall and top track and ceiling tile and concrete, and start to actually tell the computer vision algorithm is learning this, and because of that, we're able to actually start to do some initial prototypes with what we are calling progress tracking. So identifying like percentage of linear footage of drywall complete or framing. And then start to bubble this up into some insights into percentage complete as it relates to how it's going against the schedule. I think when you can start to take all of this great information that you've captured and then boil it up in a very simple, easy way to your project executives, to your other stakeholders, so they can understand from a bird's eye view, a high level, like what's going on the job site, and gain insights from those. I think that's really where the power of all this data is coming from, is how you can actually use it to gain efficiencies and understand how your your projects are progressing. And I think that's really where the future of our company is headed, is around this, the insights piece, and being able to kind of understand the progress of your job at any given time, and do it, in real time as well, not just get the information late. Because we do it at the speed of construction, we're able to capture a lot of this data very quickly and efficiently, and then spit out that information back to back to the team. So that's some pretty exciting stuff, that where we see the future of open space going is around the analytics and insights piece.
Yeah, so you could probably use that to also measure productivity, depending on how often the guy walks the site, and that'll be great for a contractor.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
That's the golden goose, right? When you can start to measure the productivity of your guys and understand how much they've installed, then you can start to plan more efficiently and understand where your gaps are in the construction schedule. So.
Yeah.
And from the bank's point of view, I mean, we're pretty technology agnostic. So we're on the lookout for these platforms that can consolidate and then distribute this information across stakeholders. And, to Tom's point, where previously we had humans going out and gathering this data, we can now take that part out of the equation, and we can use our humans to make better decisions and put their time and efforts into more valuable tasks like valuation and the like. So, where we see the future of this is, as a bank, how do we start incorporating these technologies into our actual decision-making processes? So if we have a technology that can automatically track the progress of a project, then we don't need that human to go out and double check work that's already been done. And maybe we can start automatically releasing finance, because the way we finance construction projects is on a completion rate basis. Obviously, we're not going to give the full, 100 million out up front. So it's based on, when certain milestones are met, the next round of funding is released. And there's all sorts of things in the real world which impact delays and decisions that go into making sure the checks and balances that this funding is released appropriately. And to Warren's point around the cost of technologies like LiDAR decreasing, and even to Jared's questions around the barriers of entry to regulation, our view is that it's very important to start understanding these technologies early enough so that you understand the nuances of how they work, what value they add, and where they fit into the offering and the value to the client, so that when these costs do decrease or when these regulation barriers do drop, that you're ready to act tomorrow, not in a year's time, not in 2 years' time, because ultimately the market and your clients aren't going to wait for you to learn these new ideas as they're coming out. They're going to go to your open space, who's already 10 steps ahead of us, and say, this is what we need and this is what we're looking for. So those are just my view of what we're thinking about in the future.
Guys, that's great. I don't see any questions coming up. So just want to thank you all for joining the session and giving us good insights. And it's quite exciting to think of where properties go, where the building site is going. It's moved from a piece of paper in terms of a daily site diary to drone technology, into open space, where you'll be able to interactively always view the site, and you get a better picture than to walk around the site once a month or once a week. You have a up-to-date, almost real-time solution. All right. Okay. Thanks very much, guys.
Cool.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. And if you guys have any follow-ups, feel free to reach out to me as well. I can put my contact information in the chat, or you can find me on the line. But I appreciate being invited, and hopefully one day when all this COVID thing clears up, I'll make my way over from the States over to.
Yeah, you must.
I will.
Thanks so much, Kevin.
Cool. Thank you very much, Kevin. Thank you, everybody.